Hey Reddit. I honestly never thought I'd be that guy, posting on one of these relationship advice subs, but here we are. I guess I just need to get this off my chest and see what people have to say, maybe find some clarity or a path forward, because right now I feel like I'm drowning. My wife, Kelly, and I have been together for 10 years, married for 6. For the most part, I thought things were fine. We've had our ups and downs like anyone, but I never thought I'd be the guy with a cheating wife. Never thought I'd end up posting my life for strangers to dissect online. Yet, that's exactly what's happening. To be honest, the signs were there. But you know how it is. When you're in it, you don't want to see them. You tell yourself you're overthinking things. I used to joke that Kelly was a terrible liar. I mean, she couldn't even keep a secret about a surprise birthday party once. But now, she's become a master at it. It's like she's a completely different person, and I'm the idiot who didn't catch on fast enough. It started small, as these things do. She was going out more, saying she was hanging with her friends, but something just felt off. I brushed it aside, convinced myself I was being paranoid. Hell, I even felt guilty for doubting her. But that feeling in the pit of my stomach wouldn't go away. It got worse when she started coming home late, always with a new excuse. Work ran late. Sarah needed help with something. The car broke down. Every time, she had a reason that sounded just plausible enough that I let it slide. Stupid, right? Looking back, I wish I'd trusted my guts sooner. Anyway, that's how it started. Just little things. But little things pile up until one day, they smack you in the face, and you can't ignore it anymore. That's where I'm at now. I'm not sure how to move forward, but I guess I'll get into that. This is only the beginning of the nightmare. After a while, the little things stopped feeling so little. Kelly's mood shifted, too. She was always on edge, snapping at me for the dumbest things. Like if I asked her what time she'd be home, she'd go on this rant about how I'm suffocating her. Do I need to check in every second of the day? I'm not a child, Jason, she'd say. It made me feel like I was doing something wrong, like maybe I was being too controlling or paranoid. But it didn't add up. It wasn't just the attitude. Kelly used to be really affectionate. Like, she was the kind of person who couldn't walk by me without touching my arm or sneaking a kiss. Now, she barely wanted to be in the same room. She started sleeping with her back to me, always too tired or not in the mood. At first, I thought it was just stress or maybe a rough patch in our marriage. You don't go through 10 years without a few dry spells, right? But this felt different. It wasn't just about sex. There was this distance between us that I couldn't bridge, no matter how hard I tried. Then came the phone. She became glued to it. I swear, if that thing had legs, she'd have run off with it instead of me. Every time I walked into the room, she'd flip her phone over or get all weird and defensive if I asked who she was texting. It's just work, or Sarah again, she'd say. I started to think I was crazy. I mean, it's not like she was always hiding her phone before. What changed? But whenever I brought it up, she'd flip out on me, like I was invading her privacy. I couldn't shake the feeling something was up. The lies were becoming more obvious, but I didn't want to believe it. It's hard to admit that someone you love could be lying to your face. Still, I kept telling myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. This was Kelly, my wife. She wouldn't do this, would she? Then came the night everything fell apart. She was out late again, supposedly at some work dinner. I was home alone, nursing a beer and trying not to overthink it. But then I got a message from one of her friends, Emily. She and Kelly go way back, and she's always been a straight shooter. Emily's text said, "Hey, just checking in. How's everything with you and Kelly?" She seemed off the last time I saw her. That hit me like a brick. Emily's not one to meddle, so she was reaching out. Something was up. I sat there for a minute, staring at my phone, heart racing, wondering if this was it. If I finally needed to face the truth. When Kelly came home, I decided to confront her. It wasn't even the evidence. There wasn't any, not yet. It was the way she walked in the door, all casual, like nothing was wrong. But I saw it in her eyes. She wasn't the Kelly I knew. So, I asked her, point blank, "Are you cheating on me?" She didn't even flinch. She laughed, like it was the most ridiculous thing she'd ever heard. "What the hell, Jason? Where is this coming from?" I didn't back down. I told her about the late nights, the lies, the phone, everything, and instead of being defensive or hurt, she just smirked, like I was some clueless fool chasing a phantom. "What? You're going to accuse me of cheating because I have a life outside of you. Grow up. That smirk should have been my answer right there, but I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. I kept pushing, trying to break through whatever wall she'd built between us. I told her something felt wrong. I told her I loved her and didn't want to lose her. Her response? Jason, you're being dramatic. If you can't handle me having friends or a job, that's your problem. I'm not going to apologize for living my life. And that was it. She stormed off to bed like nothing happened, leaving me standing there, feeling like a fool. But something in my gut told me that this wasn't over. That this was just the beginning of what would be the worst night of my life, that I didn't sleep at all that night. I just kept running her words over and over in my head. That smirk, that dismissive attitude, the way she was acting like I was losing my mind when all the signs pointed to something being wrong. The next morning, I made a decision. If she wasn't going to tell me the truth, I'd find it myself. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't help it. When she left for work, I grabbed her phone from the nightstand. It was locked, of course, but we've been together so long, I knew the passcode. My hands were shaking as I typed it in. The first thing I did was check her messages. And that's when I saw it. There were dozens of texts from a guy named Matt. I didn't recognize the name, but I sure as hell recognized the content. Late-night conversations, inside jokes, flirty messages. And then, there it was clear as day, a message from Matt that made my stomach drop. I can't stop thinking about last night. The way you felt. The way you screamed my name. I felt like I was going to be sick. There was more. They'd been meeting up for months. I scrolled through everything, trying to process what I was seeing. The lies, the betrayal. All of it laid out in front of me in a string of texts that shattered whatever hope I had left. She wasn't at work dinners. She wasn't helping Sarah. She was with him, having sex with this guy, behind my back, while coming home and pretending everything was fine. I slammed the phone down, and for a second, I couldn't breathe. This was real. Kelly was cheating on me, and I had the proof right there in my hands. Now, I had to figure out what the hell to do next. I spent the rest of that day in a fog, trying to wrap my head around everything. I don't even remember half of what I did. I think I just paced around the house, my brain going a mile a minute. I kept thinking, how could she do this? How long has this been going on? What did I do wrong? By the time Kelly came home, I was already halfway to losing it. She walked in like everything was normal, tossing her bag on the couch and barely giving me a glance. It took everything in me not to just scream at her right then and there, but I didn't. I needed answers first. Hey, I started, trying to keep my voice steady. Can we talk? She gave me that annoyed look again, like I was inconveniencing her by just existing. What is it now, Jason? I've had a long day. I really don't need this. I didn't beat around the bush. I couldn't. Who's Matt? Her face went pale. She blinked, caught off guard for the first time in a long while. She stammered for a second before trying to recover. Matt? He's just a guy from work. I shook my head. No, Kelly. He's not just a guy from work. I read your texts. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Fear, maybe guilt. But then it was gone, replaced with cold fury. You went through my phone? Are you fucking kidding me, Jason? She tried to flip it on me like I was the bad guy, like I had crossed the line. But I wasn't having it. Not this time. Don't try to turn this around on me. I saw the messages. I know you've been sleeping with him. She crossed her arms, that smirk creeping back onto her face. So, what if I have? You want to act like a detective? Then there's your answer. I felt my heart break all over again in that moment. The way she said it, so casually, like it didn't even matter. Like I didn't matter. I asked her how long it had been going on. She didn't even try to soften the blow. A few months, she said. It's not a big deal, Jason. I needed something new, something exciting. You and I. We've been done for a while, even if you didn't notice. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. We've been done? What the hell are you talking about? She sighed like explaining this was just a chore. We've been going through the motions for years, Jason. I'm tired of pretending we're happy. And yeah, I slept with Matt. I don't regret it. At least he makes me feel alive. I stood there, speechless, trying to hold back the anger and the pain boiling inside me. I didn't know what to say. All I knew was that the woman I thought I'd spend my life with didn't exist anymore. Or maybe she never did. That night was one of the longest of my life. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with him. I saw the messages, the things she said. It kept playing on repeat in my head like some twisted movie I couldn't turn off. Part of me wanted to just scream, to break something, to let all the anger and hurt out. But I couldn't even do that. I just sat there, staring at the ceiling, wondering how the hell we got here. How did I not see it sooner? Was I that blind? Or did I just not want to see it? I kept thinking about everything we'd been through. Our wedding day, the nights we stayed up talking about our future, the plans we had. I thought about the time we'd spent building this life together, and now it was all gone. Just like that. I kept telling myself I should have done something differently. Maybe if I'd paid more attention, or been more romantic, or whatever the hell she thought Matt was giving her, she wouldn't have cheated. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it didn't matter. She didn't cheat because of me. She cheated because of her. Because she was selfish. Because she didn't care about what we had anymore. But that didn't make it hurt any less. It didn't stop me from feeling like my whole world had just imploded. The next morning, Kelly acted like nothing had happened. She didn't even bring it up. She just went through her usual routine, getting ready for work, humming to herself like she hadn't just admitted to destroying our marriage the night before. I watched her from the kitchen, still numb, trying to figure out how she could be so cold. How could she go on with her life like this was just another Tuesday? I realized, in that moment, that I'd been living with a stranger. The woman I married, the one who used to care about me, who used to be my best friend, that woman was gone, replaced by someone who only cared about herself. She walked past me, grabbing her keys. "I'll be home late tonight," she said, not even looking at me. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. I just watched her walk out the door, wondering if I'd ever really known her at all, that I didn't tell anyone about what happened for a couple of days. I wasn't ready to deal with the questions, the judgment, or the pity, but I knew I couldn't keep it to myself forever. I needed to talk to someone, anyone, before I lost my mind. I called my best friend Mike. He and I have been tight since high school, and if anyone could give me some perspective, it was him. When I told him what happened, there was this long silence on the other end of the line. Then finally he spoke. "Jesus, man, I don't even know what to say. That's brutal." Yeah, brutal was one way to put it. Mike came over that night, and we sat on the porch drinking beers, talking about everything. He didn't try to sugarcoat it, and I appreciated that. He told me I needed to think about what I wanted to do next. If I wanted to stay with her, or if I needed to cut my losses and move on. The truth was, I didn't know what the hell I wanted. Part of me was still holding on to the hope that maybe we could fix things, that maybe she'd realize what she'd done and want to work it out. But another part of me knew that was just wishful thinking. Kelly wasn't sorry. She didn't even want to fix things. Mike didn't give me any answers, but just talking to him helped me see things a little more clearly. I realized that I was at a crossroads, and no matter what I chose, things were never going to be the same again. That a few days later, Kelly finally decided to acknowledge what had happened. I don't know if she felt guilty or if she just sensed that I was slipping away, but she came up to me while I was sitting on the couch and said, "We need to talk." I wasn't in the mood for another one of her manipulative games, but I figured I should hear her out. Maybe she'd actually show some remorse for once. She sat down across from me, arms crossed, that same annoyed expression on her face. "Look, I know you're upset, but I think you're blowing this whole thing out of proportion. It's not like I've been seeing Matt for years or anything. It's just been a few times. I'm not in love with him. It was just fun. You're taking it way too seriously." Too seriously? I stared at her, dumbfounded. How could she say that? This wasn't some petty argument over leaving the dishes in the sink. She betrayed me in the worst way possible, and now she was acting like it was no big deal. "You slept with another man, Kelly. You lied to me for months," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "How am I supposed to not take that seriously?" She rolled her eyes and let out this exaggerated sigh, like I was being unreasonable. "Jason, I told you it wasn't about you. I just needed something different, something exciting. We've been stuck in a rut for years. I thought you'd understand that." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. There was her problem, her boredom, and somehow it was all supposed to make sense to me. She wasn't apologizing. Not really. She was just trying to justify it. "So, this is my fault? Because I wasn't exciting enough for you?" I asked, my voice rising despite myself. She shrugged. and for a second, I thought she might actually say yes. But then, she hit me with something even worse. I'm not saying it's all your fault, but yeah, maybe if you paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere. There it was, the classic blame shift. My blood boiled, but before I could explode, she stood up and walked out of the room, like the conversation was over. As if her half-assed apology and twisted logic were enough to make everything okay. I sat there, fuming, trying to process what had just happened. I realized that she didn't regret what she'd done. She didn't even feel bad. She was trying to justify it, to make me feel like I was the problem. And maybe for a second, I did. Maybe for a second, I actually wondered if I had driven her to cheat. But then it hit me, no one forces someone to cheat. She made that choice. She decided to lie, sneak around, and betray me. That was on her. After that conversation, things just kept getting worse. Kelly was barely around, and when she was, it felt like we were strangers living in the same house. She still didn't seem to care that she'd blown up our marriage. Meanwhile, I was falling apart on the inside, trying to hold it together long enough to figure out my next move. I started noticing more things, too, little clues that the affair with Matt wasn't over. She was still glued to her phone, still disappearing at odd hours, still coming home late without any real explanation. Every time I brought it up, she'd brush me off or get defensive. But I knew. Deep down, I knew. The final straw came one night when she told me she was going out with the girls. I didn't believe her for a second, but I kept my mouth shut. Instead, I decided to follow her. I'm not proud of it, but at that point, I needed to know for sure. I tailed her for about 20 minutes until she pulled into the parking lot of a motel. Not exactly the place you'd go for a girls' night out. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched her walk inside, and I just sat there, frozen, wondering what the hell I was doing. I waited for a few minutes, then got out of the car and went inside. I wasn't thinking straight. Wasn't even sure what I was going to do once I got there. But when I walked down that hallway and saw her coming out of a room with Matt right behind her, everything went black. She saw me standing there and froze. Matt had this stupid look on his face, like he didn't know what to do. I didn't say anything. I just turned around and walked out. I couldn't even look at her. That was it for me. That was the moment I knew I couldn't stay in this marriage. I tried. God knows I tried, but there was nothing left to fight for. She'd made her choice, and there was no coming back from it. When I got home, I started packing my things. I wasn't waiting for her to come back and spin another web of lies. I was done. I packed enough clothes for a few days and grabbed some essentials. As I threw my suitcase into the trunk of my car, it hit me. This was really happening. I was leaving my wife. My whole life was about to change, and I had no idea what the hell was going to come next. But I knew I couldn't stay. Not with her. Not after everything she'd done. When Kelly came home later that night, she found the house empty. I wasn't there to see her reaction, but I'm sure she was pissed. I left a note on the kitchen counter, something short and to the point. I'm done. Don't contact me. That was it. I didn't owe her anything more. I crashed at Mike's place for the first couple of nights. He didn't ask a lot of questions, just handed me a beer and let me sit in silence. I appreciated that. I wasn't ready to talk about what had happened. Not yet. I just needed to breathe, to try and process the fact that my marriage, my whole life, had fallen apart in the span of a few weeks. Kelly tried calling me a few times, but I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to hear whatever bullshit excuses she had lined up. I wasn't ready to deal with her at all. Eventually, I told Mike everything. He just shook his head and said, "You did the right thing, man. You couldn't stay in that mess." I knew he was right, but knowing that didn't make it any easier. After a few days, I knew I had to face reality. I called a lawyer to get the ball rolling on the divorce. It felt surreal, sitting in that office, talking about dividing assets and separating our lives. Kelly and I didn't have kids, thank God, but we still had a house, a shared bank account, and 10 years of history to untangle. My lawyer asked me if I wanted to pursue any kind of fault-based divorce, given the infidelity, but I told him I just wanted it over with as fast as possible. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to drag it out. I just wanted out. As the days passed, I started to feel the weight of everything hit me. The anger, the betrayal, the sadness. It all came crashing down. Some days, I couldn't even get out of bed. Other days, I felt this intense rage bubbling inside me, like I wanted to scream at the universe for putting me through this. I kept asking myself how it got so bad. How did we go from being in love, from planning a future together, to this? Was it me? Was I blind? Or was she just that good at hiding her lies? But deep down, I knew the answer didn't matter anymore. Kelly had made her choices, and now I had to make mine. It has been a few weeks since I left, and things are slowly starting to get clearer. I'm not over it, not by a long shot, but I'm learning to accept that this chapter of my life is over. I can't say I'm at peace yet, but I'm working on it. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that you can't control other people's actions. You can love someone with everything you have, but that doesn't mean they'll love you back the same way. And that's not on you. That's on them. For anyone reading this who's going through something similar, trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't let someone else make you feel crazy or guilty for wanting the truth. As for me, I'm moving forward, slowly but surely, and one day I'll be okay. Thanks for reading, Reddit.